In Michael Wolff's new book, Fire and Fury, former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon was highly critical of the president and his family, which proves the old saying that hell hath no fury like a big hairy lump of asexual skin and psoriasis.
An attorney for President Trump is threatening legal action against Steve Bannon over the comments he made in his book. Trump's attorney will focus on Bannon just as soon as he wraps up Trump's 4,000 other lawsuits.
And earlier today, it was announced that Steve Bannon is stepping down as chairman of Breitbart News Network after the public break with President Trump. It's the old Hollywood excuse. He's resigning to spend more time with his kids, brainwashing them to hate the Jews.
North and South Korea are talking on the phone for the first time in years. Previously, they'd only been communicating through emojis and Real Housewives gifs. President Trump is taking credit for the recent talks between North and South Korea. He's actually right, because they would rather talk to each other than talk to him.
Searching for a bipartisan deal to avoid a government shutdown, President Trump suggested earlier today that an immigration agreement could be reached in 2 phases. Phase 1, lure immigrants into public. Phase 2, put them to work building the wall from the Mexican side.
Earlier this week, there was a small fire at Trump Tower, or what Trump calls a stable flame.
Following her inspirational speech at Sunday's Golden Globes, there's been a renewed movement for Oprah Winfrey to run for president in 2020. Now, I could only get on board if she has a cabinet made up entirely of the faces of daytime television. So Steve Wilkos, Secretary of Defense. Ellen could be Secretary of Dance. Shepard Smith should probably be Director of the CIA because clearly he can keep secrets. And of course, Steve Harvey, the Secretary of the Porn Stash.
Oh. I won't ask why.
Have you seen his mustache? Anyway, sorry, Tamra.
No, let's go on. Gayle King says Oprah Winfrey is intrigued by the idea of running for president. Less than by her new line of biodegradable kitchenware, but more than by cauliflower mac and cheese.
Cauliflower mac and cheese sounds delicious. Several celebrities wore Time's Up pins at the 2018 Golden Globes in order to show solidarity for the sexual harassment prevention movement. Their efforts, of course, were unfortunately negated by every dude in attendance with a mustache.
Hitting the mustache guys hard tonight. Take it, guys with a mustache. Jennifer Aniston and Angelina Jolie attended the same Golden Globes after party. They've decided to let bygones be bygones and let frown lines be frown lines.
Man couldn't get away with saying that. Good for you, Tamra. Video widely circulated of President Trump at last night's college football national championship game in Atlanta, where he appeared to not know the words to our national anthem. This is a fundamental example of fake news, ladies and gentlemen, because if you look closely, President Trump is very clearly singing every word of the Russian national anthem.
50.7% of new students attending medical school in 2017 were women, exceeding the number of men for the first time ever. As those future female doctors have a bright future ahead, full of patients mansplaining their own diagnosis to them.
Now, the reason why that joke is funny, Tamra, is... No, just kidding. The UK's Guardian reports that Satanism is on the rise. But when you think about the state of the world, doesn't the icy embrace of the dark underlord seem at least a little bit more comforting?
Jeff Sessions wants the federal government to have a say over state marijuana laws, though he quickly mellowed out after someone scratched his ears and blew pot smoke in his face.
The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
That's right, everybody wants to rule the world, or at least Oprah. Welcome to the Trump Report! At a special early time, for those of you watching live, we appreciate you joining us in the YouTube chat. For those watching the archive, it doesn't make any difference, but we appreciate those of you who are here with us early. I'm Christian Bladt. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. To my left, your right, watching on YouTube, Chelsea Galicia. Where can people find you?
At Chelsea Galicia.
And I feel like we're dressed like sort of the opposing sides of an old, what they would call cowboy and Indian movies back then. Now I guess it's a Native American and like ranch hand. I don't even know what you actually call it.
Or just Western.
Cow person movie perhaps. And then of course, thank you as always to Tamra. Where can people find you?
You can find me on social media at Hey Tamra.
And at the far, far end of the desk.
Way over here.
Scott Moore.
Hi.
And people can find you at...
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at sman80. That's SMAN80.
But your Instagram's something different.
It is different.
It's so confusing.
I know.
You know, Kevin Undergaro was wandering around here
Yeah.
too. It's one of those things he doesn't like. You gotta have consistency and
You
branding.
do, and I am big on that, but I have too common of a name, so
That's true.
it's never worked
So,
very well.
and of course, you can follow Trump Report at Trump Report ABTV. We are in for a special treat today because in the booth, engineer extraordinaire, our friend Marissa, who we get to give a lot of credit to some of the great JPEGs or GIFs or GIFs, you know, whichever format she likes to save them in. But the thumbnails for each episode, she does some amazing work, and I usually get to give her credit. But she's not there, so she doesn't actually receive the credit. So for this episode, Real Genius, she did indeed revisit the theme of the film Real Genius, which I think was also after, oh, I didn't mean to hit that microphone. I think that also was released after You Were Born, Chelsea. And that's some amazing work, so thank you, Marissa. We really appreciate that.
You're welcome, guys.
We love it.
I love doing this for you.
Week after week, it's always incredible.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure.
Well, good. I know. I have to sort of come up with. I'll come up with a really good title for the State of the Union, which I'm sorry, Chelsea, is only a few weeks away. Yeah. So
Why sorry to me?
because you're gonna have to sit through it, a whole 90 minutes of President Trump talking about how great he is.
You think that's harder for me than it is for most people to sit
Yeah, I
there?
think so. You know, I mean,
Well, hey, at least pot is legal now in California, so whatever Jeff
no,
says.
see, there's something to be said for that.
Get through it.
There's so many different places where we could start today, but we had to start with the thumbnail, of course. But I guess let's talk a little bit about the fire and fury of Michael Wolff's book. And it's interesting because President Trump went out of his way to fight the release of the book. And he wasn't, but as Michael Wolff has pointed out himself, it should scare us that he tried. And it's interesting that he's so quick to discredit the book, but yet wanted to make sure it wasn't released. So you know, that's sort of like, you know, the R-rated movie your parents don't want you to watch because it's like it's actually really good. You know, it's like you know, well, we have to take Basic Instinct out of the house. You can't watch that. And anyway, so I think it's kind of I don't know. The whole thing is sort of fascinating, but of course, the best part was following the criticism that was sort of leaked from the book. President Trump pointed out that he is like really smart and also a quote stable genius. And to get immediate comment on that, I wanted to go to the most stable genius that I know, Chelsea Galicia. What do you think of our stable genius in chief and making sure that everybody knows that he is indeed stable?
You know, I have had this long-held theory of mine. Maybe you can help me name it. But it's whenever people go out of their way to tell you how great they are, smart they are. You know what I see it a lot of? Guys that are like, look how wonderful I am to my girlfriend or wife. Look how faithful I am. There is something going on. So if you need to be overtly telling people how great you are, those people make me nervous. When people are like, well, you know, because I'm just so honest. I'm like, are you? That actually makes me very nervous about people. So this holds true because he's coming out and saying, I'm a stable genius. Ooh, now that's confirmation that you're not.
It's interesting that, because it's not like the term stable genius is common in the vernacular. It's not like people are often like saying this is a stable genius. You know, people are sometimes stable, sometimes a genius, but you don't say that they're a stable genius.
How about an inconsistent genius? Is that?
Well, I mean, you have eccentric geniuses.
Yes.
I mean, you know, there's, you know, he's a fictional character, but Doc Brown from Back to the Future, he's not a stable genius. He's an eccentric genius. And I believe he's a real scientist.
Or it could be correct if it was like stable wacko?
Yeah, well,
between that and his tweet of I'm really smart.
Yeah.
It's like he grammar checks his tweets through WordPerfect 1997 before that will correct, you know, suggest this word and then put in commas, and that's that's the only one that's the only filter the tweet goes through before it goes out, because it's just so strange.
You mean like when the little paperclip comes up and
Yeah.
says, "Hey, it looks like you're sending a tweet. Would you like some help with that?" And yeah, the like a stable genius. My first thought was, did Janice from the Muppets write that, or any pick your favorite Valley girl?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are fascinating in their own way. But Tamra, your thoughts on being a stable genius? Yourself, we've always described as a stable genius. As
Always.
well.
You guys have said that consistently from
That's
the
what-
second I
that's
showed up
consistent.
on
Why
it.
you're here.
Stable,
That's why you're
consistent,
here.
exactly.
I cannot believe that you said that, because I have been saying that exact thing recently. I'm going to say this as quick as possible, but recently because of my last job and because of an organization that I've been working with, I am around more 70-year-old white men than most people my age, I would say.
Wow.
And they all do that, and it drives me crazy. I think it's a generational thing. A certain generation grew up sitting back in their rocking chair saying, I would give someone the shirt off my back before I'd tell them a lie. I'm a truthful person, and that's what I put forth more than anything. And it's like,
they are the biggest liars.
absolutely,
Absolutely, yeah.
absolutely.
What is this?
It's like a generational thing. I don't know
It
why
needs
they
a name.
do that.
Christian, you're going to come up with the name
I'm
of
going to
this
come up with a
syndrome.
name, but anybody in the chat can also suggest
it is-
names.
it's-
I feel like Storage Yard Resident.
I
is
think
gonna
something
know
was
there.
just in the lead in the paint, and
Maybe,
some kids ate too
yeah.
much paint chips, and now they don't know what's up or down or left or right anymore.
I don't know, but this is like a real phenomenon.
It is.
Yep.
But I will, of course, take this moment to talk about how this is the best show on the internet, and we're all stable geniuses.
Of course.
Scott, when you hear these sort of comments, and it's so funny because it's like so long ago now that
I know, this
this
felt
is
like-
our first chance to talk
I know.
about it. What are your thoughts? Is this just consistent with everything else, or are you still able to be surprised by President Trump? I guess it's a two-pronged. What are your thoughts on this? Did you get surprised by this, and do you think it's possible?
No, but I woke up that day thinking, is this real? Are we in reality anymore? This is supposedly the President of the United States writing these kind of posts. That was my first thought, even though nothing surprises me anymore. I just thought it comes across so idiotic. And exactly what Chelsea was saying, too, is just, it's the opposite. If you have to go out of your way to explain yourself, then clearly you're not what you're claiming to be. You're the opposite of that. And that's what it was just very bizarre. And very bizarre that he made such a big deal about this book, because he was basically, I bought the book now. I probably wouldn't even bought the book if he didn't make a big deal about
Sure.
it.
It
I
is like
thought,
sold out
right.
everywhere.
I thought, well, I want to check this out now because he keeps tweeting about it. So clearly there's some truth to it, even if it was, maybe exaggerated here or there, because he's kind of a tabloidy writer, whatever. But I mean, he
I've
kept
heard him
putting it out
described.
there.
I've heard him described as the male Kitty Kelly,
Yes.
if you remember some
Yes,
of the
yep.
tabloid
At
books that
some
she wrote.
point,
Yeah.
he's going to come and take credit for the fact that it's a number
Number
one
one
New York
bestseller, of
Times
course.
bestselling.
That'll be the
I-
next
Absolutely, I feel
part.
like that. You can pre-write a tweet and save it. There's a draft in his
Yeah.
folder that is ready for that. And yeah, to your point, it's very interesting because Wolf has admitted, I believe it was earlier today on CBS, that he didn't interview any senior White House staff for the book. And President Trump probably didn't realize he was being interviewed for this book when he would sit down. And look, it doesn't do much for the credibility of a guy who looks like Dr. Evil from Austin
know, right?
Powers.
That's what we were saying, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like
I didn't think about that, but it's so true.
I'm glad you appreciate that. There's, so even if there's like, I don't know, a small percentage of truth in there has to be one thing in particular that really bothers him, that it's in the book. And I think that the Steve Bannon comments were certainly something that, he just didn't expect it. But he should have, because despite the way that they tried to spin it in the media, he did get fired. General Kelly was like, no more of that. And he's like, yeah, but I thought I was your guy. And the surprising thing, and I made a joke about it at the top of the show, is that now Steve Bannon is stepping down from Breitbart, I guess if you criticize Putin, you don't get to write for Pravda anymore. I don't even know if they still have Pravda, but the point that I'm
And
making.
here, I was about to tell you that my New Year's resolution was to listen to Steve Bannon so that you wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
He's got a radio show on
On
satellite.
He does on Sirius.
Well, he
And-
did. I don't know if he does anymore.
think
it's-
well-
It's the Breitbart News show. I don't
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
that's true. I don't
It's
think it was a
not his show.
standalone show.
It's right next door to my
Yeah.
actual favorite.
The Patriot, or
The
what's
POTUS.
that?
It's called Patriot.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
it's
called
right
that.
after POTUS.
Yeah.
And so am I not going to be able to hear him anymore? Is he like out of all things?
Oh,
related to
he'll
Breitbart?
find some
He
place to
will.
do. If I had to guess, Infowars. Alex Jones has a whole network over there, and I think he'd love to have him. We can put Steve Bannon on the case of all the false flags, mass shootings that didn't really happen, things like that. But there was like a couple days there where I think people were in love with Steve Bannon.
What do you mean in love?
Well, because of what he said about President Trump.
Oh.
That he said, I feel like it's actually treasonous that Donnie Jr. met with the Russians. And it was interesting, too, because later that day, President Trump he basically says, oh, well, he just said that I'm actually a great guy and he respects me. And I was like, all right, well, that's delusional. And then you're like, oh, no, Bannon did actually say that. It's the whole thing. It's just a really bad soap opera.
And and he said something about in one of his tweets. Was like, oh, he barely worked for me.
Yeah,
my presidency was all mine, and he couldn't stand the winning because I won on my first try and all this crazy stuff too. And again, it was kind of going on that like he was barely a part of anything, like Paul Manafort,
which was followed by
and Michael
of course,
Flynn being hired by Obama and all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's a good point, too, is because Bannon's sort of slight retraction is that, it wasn't treasonous for Don Jr. to meet with the Russians. It was treasonous for Paul Manafort to do it, but not Don Jr. He did not commit an act of treason. What if President Trump's son were actually to be convicted of treason and he didn't pardon his son?
Ooh.
Now that'd be the most interesting thing that happened in all of this.
Ooh, I like it.
Maybe he did that because he wants to protect himself. I don't know. That'd be really horrible, though. Like,
the whole,
let your son go to protect your own self.
The whole Steve Bannon saga, I was going to say it's like a soap opera, but it's actually really bad fan fiction for a soap opera. It's not even as well done as a soap opera. It's all very transparent. It's a lot of back and forth, and at the end of the day, Steve Bannon stepping down from Breitbart, where he only just went back a couple months ago. It's I don't know. It's interesting, but Chelsea, are you going to try to still listen to Steve Bannon?
I will try and listen. And I was listening to the other people that they have on that station, trying to understand any logic that goes on that side of the thinking of politics, because I really I don't get it, and I've been like, whatever, they're just crazy. But I'm really trying to find little threads of truth, or not even truth, but what is the way that they see the world, that they understand the world, that they could possibly think the way that they think. And wish me luck, because it's not been easy to do. I mean, I remember I flipped over one day and Bannon was like, well, that's the reason that women on the left hate Sarah Palin, because she had it all. Like, where the did he?
I know.
Did he get that? Did he get a bunch of women on the left all together and say, all right, you hate Sarah Palin because she's got a husband and kids and a political position, right? And we all said yes. Like, how does he come up with these things? I think the problem is that I'm looking for logic where there may not be any.
There may not,
but
be
I'll
any
keep
there.
trying.
And I think it's hard to find in the extremes.
I could see why he thinks that, because he comes from the family values based base that is like, we know that women just want to get married and have children. That's what women want. He thinks that. But I know those leftist women, they also care about career. So
And
so there's Sarah Palin, who was able to be governor. Of course, the family values of the Palin family. There are a number of different things that you could point at, but I'll just mention the most recent, which was their son breaking into their house so that they could beat up their father right around Christmas time. So Merry Christmas from the Palins. So
what's going on that son?
I didn't hear about
there's
that.
there's not enough. There's not enough sun in Alaska, I think, is what it comes down to. It's too.
And
dark
I was
there.
about to make a really
cold.
mean joke about not enough sun, so the other daughter's constantly getting laid out of wedlock and having babies. But I will not say anything like that.
I'm
That's
so glad
really
she wouldn't say anything
disrespectful.
like that. That would
It's
be
really
hugely,
low,
disrespectful.
inappropriate. Yeah.
And by the way, of course, Storage Yard Resident is in the chat. He should say that these men who explain themselves as being such great men, just call them crazy old white men. He's encountered them too. So they're all out there.
And
Interesting.
Demonaut asked earlier why we are early.
Well, if you really want to know, it's because my babysitter's in Scotland. That's really what it comes down to. There are a lot of different reasons why we will sometimes do the show early, but that's the reason why we're doing this one early. But thank you, Demonaut. And Canadian Sunrise. I don't know if I'm familiar with Canadian Sunrise, so thank you for
But I
being
like
there.
the sound of that.
Love that.
Yes.
Yeah. What's the difference between a Canadian Sunrise and Tequila Sunrise?
And
My
Canadian mist.
Yeah, I'm just guessing that like Canadian Sunrise, it's just like some back bacon in a shot glass with like a little bit of lime juice. But anyway,
That's
just
Canadian bacon, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Canadian sunrise. So anyway, let us know what you think about all of this. This is just banner week. Not a bannon week, but a banner week.
Nicely played.
Thank you. But the other big news that we can start with, Chelsea, is it's a drum that you've been beating for a while. This notion that Oprah Winfrey should run for president in 2020. And I know that later on tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, you'll be on the political beat with our friend Drexel, who I know is not a fan of this notion that Oprah should run for president. Well, and whether I am or not will follow your explanation of how much more excited are you now that people are talking about it a little bit more.
Okay, well, I mean, I feel like a little ahead of the curve here because I have been thinking this, I don't know, for the better part of the last 10 years. I became Oprah obsessed in college, so that would be around 2002, 3, 4, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. Let's not count.
Completely Oprah obsessed. In fact, I think I may give her more credit for raising me than my parents.
Wow.
A whole lot of my mindset, the way that I think about, like the fact that I am here. Like if I told you the whole, like how I actually ended up here at AfterBuzz, it all comes back down to Oprah.
You're gonna have to tell us sometime, but continue.
Yes. So, anyways, I have been a fan of this woman for a very long time, and so by the time everyone else is like Oprah should be president, I'm like, I'm way past that. I think Oprah for like world dictator is more like it. Now, here's the thing. I know that people are like, one great speech does not make a billionaire presidential material.
I don't know. One great speech made President Obama. You know,
But
he speaks once at the Democratic Convention.
I think everybody go back and watch old Oprah episodes, which I actually don't even know how to do that because if it was possible to go back and watch Oprah episodes on demand, I may never show up here or anywhere else in my life, okay?
There's a lot of episodes she's not going to want you to see, you know, because this isn't always the Oprah that we had.
Yeah, in the old days, wasn't it that like just cheesy?
It was very Phil Donahue, Jerry Springer. She was right in there with all of them.
Now listen, okay, fine, guys, go back to the last show, and you'll see that she says in the early days she was just doing shows as shows were being done, and then on one of those shows where she had the skinheads on and she realized that they were using her platform rather than her being able to shine a light on these people and get people to sort of see how ridiculous they were, that she was actually giving them a platform and she was not going to do that anymore. So
but it did not help her cause that she went around the studio pointing at all the skinheads and saying, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
Now
that did not help her cause.
Just silly, Christian.
And she paid the taxes on those cars.
Right, absolutely. And then she started reading these books. For the one big game changer is Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav, where she understood intention and that every show needed an intention that was going to further something that she felt was important for people to know and understand. So she learned like the rest of us. I'm sure there's been a joke or two in your past that you're less than proud of, but now you've seen the light. And
It might even be a joke I've gotten paid for that I wouldn't be able to tell in front of people anymore because of a word that's in it.
So now, don't you relate to Oprah?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I know, right?
The word that we use now for that word is developmentally disabled. So the word that I had in a punchline in 1998 is not politically correct anymore. Well, Lady Goth in the chat has a great question for you. What are her policies?
All right. So here's the thing. I don't know, let's say, like what she believes about immigration, but I understand what she understands about how the way the world works. She understands, and you know, some people are going to think this is hokey, the way the universe works on an energetic, spiritual level. She understands, you know, to some people, like love is some like woo-woo silly thing, but there is real power in compassion and love and being free of judgment or working through your judgment. All sorts of things that most of us don't appreciate that would translate into policies that are humane, that are intelligent, and that work with the natural order of the universe. So people could be very right that I don't know every last policy, but I am confident that those policies would be grounded in values and laws of how the world works. And therefore, she'd be genius.
She would indeed be genius as far as you're concerned. I feel like We're going to bless you,
Sorry,
Tamra.
thank you.
We're going to end up in an interesting situation at the end of President Trump's tenure, which Scott actually has one of those little egg timers.
I do.
It's pretty close to
It
the
is.
end.
I still don't
Yeah.
think it's
We're
gonna
very close to
go
zero
all the
hour,
way.
yeah.
Yes, to
But
2021.
Scott was telling me, as Chelsea was explaining, that Oprah is also responsible for him joining AfterBuzz too, right?
It's because she gave you a car?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only way I get around. Actually, I have a whole joke. So
I mean-
I used to joke on Twitter all the time and have her on a lot of my
I mean, I'm not
tweets.
even joking. Like, let's just say why I became interested in politics. Oprah, and I'll give you a very short, like, connect the dots reason why. Oprah had a guest on her show many times named Marianne Williamson. I used to go see Marianne Williamson's lecture in Beverly Hills, and in 2013, Marianne announced she was running for Congress for the seat now that Ted Lieu has, and so I volunteered on that campaign. That was my
wow.
first political experience of any kind, and that's what made me the political aficionado that I am.
Oh, nice.
And that's what got you arrested.
And
only
wait,
2
hold
years
on.
ago. Yeah.
And so on that campaign, volunteering, I met a friend named Sina. And after that campaign,
Oh.
Sina became Maria's assistant. And that's how I ended up at AfterBuzz.
Ah,
See, now we've connected
interesting.
those.
We
dots.
have.
So, my question is, though, back to what I was going to say, which is that at the end of Trump's administration, whenever it is, we're going to see some problems that stem from the fact of when you take a television personality and put them in the White House. Do you think that the right fix to that would be to take a television personality and put them in the White House?
Christian, stop being so simplistic. That's well. Let's see. We've had men. We've
feel like
had
I just got
a
woman-splained
series-
to.
We've had a series of penises in the White House. How stupid are we to put another one in when we know how bad the previous one turned out? Right? That's that kind of logic.
Well-
it's not all men are bad. It's not all billionaires would be bad. It's not all celebrities would be bad. It's just the specific one that currently resides in the White House.
And it's not
is-
that all women would be bad as presidents, just Hillary Clinton is what apparently people thought.
Right. I'm glad
That's
we're
where you're right.
understanding each other.
No, I think
Okay.
that there are a lot of other women that people would be happy to vote for, and I just think that Hillary wasn't the one. That
Right,
was probably
but
not the
let's-
right choice.
Let's not draw the comparisons just at they're both billionaires made on TV. I mean, there's so much more to each of them, frankly. And the comparisons should be a little bit more thoughtful because I think it's just when you just, they're both billionaires that made their money from TV.
I don't think I mentioned billionaire ones. I just said they're both on TV. What I will say is that Oprah Winfrey does not have legislative experience. However, you don't have to look far on daytime TV to find someone who does. Jerry Springer was once the mayor of Cleveland. So you see, I think Jerry Springer is more
What about Judge Judy?
qualified. Judge Judy's another great, but I would say Judge Judy is definitely more qualified. But I'm specifically talking about Jerry Springer. Sure, there's a little matter of how he paid for a prostitute with a personal check. Okay, look, it was the 70s. You know, things were crazy. You know, a lot of stuff happens. But I think that Jerry Springer speaks to the same demographic that President Trump does. So I think he might be able to get a little bit more, get some more votes.
I think that there are some Trump supporters who probably are Oprah fans. And there are some Trump reporters that voted for Trump because A, he's got a lot of money, so he must be smart in business, which they'll think about Oprah.
Look at the Dow, 25,000 for the first time.
Oh, please, enough with that.
These are the people you're talking about. This is the stuff that they'll be excited about.
Ugh.
I'm
okay.
sure Oprah's not
But-
crying over that, by the way. I'm sure Oprah's like, oh no, my portfolio is doing so much better than it was a year and a half ago.
She does not care.
So she doesn't care about money.
Oh, way to go to the extreme.
So
You sound like a
somebody
Trump
has
supporter.
to take care of Stedman, all right? Because he's not taking care of himself.
Right.
Gail can take care of herself,
That's right.
I
She's
think-
independent.
even though
You
she
know-
was a little close to Charlie Rose. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I think that the Democrats are just really excited to have somebody to be fired up about. We've all just been in such a state for the past year that to have somebody that seems like a candidate that would be opposing every single thing that's the wall and all of the baloney that's being talked about right now, like it's just somebody to be excited about, because who else? There's not really anybody
listen,
else.
I think that there would be more people that would vote for Oprah over Bernie, Elizabeth
absolutely.
Warren.
I agree with that, especially Elizabeth Warren. I think she still doesn't have that kind of Bernie
Yeah.
is very well known now. He's known outside of political circles.
I mean, what do you think?
Elizabeth Warren.
Oprah,
She doesn't
Cory
have the name
Booker.
recognition.
I think people would still want Oprah over Cory.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just who do you
Name
know?
recognition.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
name
you feel
recognition.
comfortable with, like, and that's why people were drawn to Donald Trump because he was on TV and they felt like they knew him too, and they're like successful and they feel like they know Oprah and she has a lot of. I have my concerns that Christian said too, but I'm just curious: would we call her President Oprah or President Winfrey?
I think you'd have to
That's
call it
the
President
challenge.
Winfrey. That's a good point.
That's the
though.
only question I have.
Yeah.
You don't call her anything. You
Or
can't
just
even
Oprah.
look her in the eyes. No,
I know.
she's
See, I don't
actually
know.
she's so cool that she would actually let you talk to her going up on the street. You'd probably just call her Oprah, and she would respond.
I wonder how many people who've worked for Oprah in her career would actually vote for her. Because, I
Well,
think...
I know her makeup artist, and he loves her, and I am very confident that he would vote for her.
All right, so she has one vote. She has your vote.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have Drexel's vote. I want to see who else is on the ballot. All right, I want to know who else is on the ballot
Mm-hmm.
because to Scott's point, people were drawn to Donald Trump. I think they were drawn to Donald Trump because they couldn't handle an electric candidate like John Kasich. They just weren't ready to be excited and rocked like that.
My initial reaction is I would not want another television personality.
That would be my initial reaction
That's my
as
initial
well.
reaction. But
Yeah.
as you pointed
Right,
out, like
that would be my-
that you're the same thing. Like you said, the same thing as being like, well, the previous was a male, so we can't have another male. So yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. I wouldn't rule her out.
I think
but-
she would hire some good people. Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, I mean, she has all these people whose careers she started, I mean, would Gail be on CBS if it weren't for Oprah? So I
Listen,
think...
Oprah has great taste. Stacey Ike, anyone?
I don't know who that is. But
Yes,
She's a
she's
AfterBuzz
AfterBuzz.
host.
The guy
Oh my
that
gosh, I'm
wrote
sorry,
A
yes.
Million Little Pieces, though.
Oh, yeah. That's,
You're gonna point out one.
Look, hey,
She better get used to it.
That's right, if she's gonna run.
You better
Look-
toughen up, Oprah.
Yeah.
look,
She doesn't
coming
care.
at ya.
She doesn't care. But
we
Stacey
all have
Ike,
a Marla Maples somewhere in our past, okay? We
Stacey
all-
Ike was an AfterBuzz TV host. Oprah plucked her from the carpet and made her the first live host on OWN.
I do remember that now
Yep.
that you say it. And look, I'm not saying that she doesn't have great taste, obviously.
She's called in to the after show on Greenleaf.
Well, if she calls in here, I'll vote for her. How about that? All right.
She's
And
amazing at
you know
what
what
she
though?
does.
I have no principles. If President Trump calls in here, I'll vote for him. So if you call into this show,
We're going to have
It'll
issues.
oh wait, no. Here's the thing. If Trump's in studio, I'll vote for him. I'm just on the phone. I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
that
anyone could be on
but
the
he doesn't
phone.
Come, but here's the thing. He doesn't come to California. That was something. It's not
Which
in my
is-
notes.
thank
But
goodness.
he's the first president since Eisenhower to not go to California in his first year. But here's
And
the
I was
thing.
like, thank goodness.
He knows he doesn't need to. He doesn't.
Nobody wants him to come here.
That
That's
just
why.
tells me- that just tells me, by the way, that the wall is going to be like on the southern border of Arizona,
Yeah.
and it's going to kind of creep up. Probably going to go a little bit past Palm Springs because there's some good golf out there. But I think we're going to be on the other side of the wall when it's all said and done.
I'll go
Great.
back to my roots.
I know, I'm like,
All
thank
right,
goodness,
me.
let's make it happen then. Make it a lot easier for me to go on to visit.
Well, that does bring me to another point. Have we exhausted the topic of Oprah? Because I,
I
feel
mean,
like
never, but okay. If you
I wanted to make sure that we left no Oprah stone
Unturned.
unoverturned. Okay. But please let us know in the chat, whether you're in the live chat or you're commenting in the archive version of the show.
I'm a one-issue voter, and my
Yes.
issue is that my candidate has to have won an Oscar.
Storage, here's the thing. I'm going to take that further. I will only vote for an EGOT. So someone who has an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony.
Cher, all right.
Well, I was going to say Whoopi Goldberg, but you're
I'll
absolutely
take
right.
Cher.
Yeah,
Well, Whoopi could be
Oh,
VP,
Super
or
Soul
she could be.
Sunday. I love
we could switch it
Canadian
out.
Sunrise already. Yes.
Oprah does not have Storage Yard residents votes. Demonot says.
Why am I not surprised?
Not
right?
mainstream. Storage Yard resident. What TV personality would get your vote? I'm just wondering. I mean, I know you were on the Trump train, but let's just say another.
Let's say Trump is not running again.
Let's just maybe
For,
he's gone
reasons.
away for 5 to 10 for some reason,
I
just
would
for a long
really,
vacation.
I would
reasons.
really like to have a conversation about why Oprah does not have his vote. I have a feeling it's going to sound somewhat like communist type of.
So it might rhyme more with socialist, It might not actually be communist. By the way, high praise in the chat, so we have to stop everything we're talking about. Ms. Ash 3070, thanks to time zones, I've never been able to catch you live. I just wanted to send my love. Really appreciate your wonderful insight every week. Thank you. You know,
you.
I
Yes,
feel
thank
like we
you.
have stable, wonderful insight every week because we're all such geniuses. But thank you, Ms. Ash. And make sure you follow us on Twitter, @TrumpReportABTV. What I was going to say before, though, was President Trump seems to be like edging a little bit closer to this idea of some kind of immigration change. I made a joke about it up at the top, but he's potentially open to having, you know, millions of people actually be able to be immigrated. Wow. This is why I need to write everything that I say. But you know, look, that's the wrong word, but that is actually what I meant. It's not a real
It's a
word,
very
but
Trump
they would
word,
be
though.
immigrants.
It's not something Trump would say.
You know what?
We're gonna have the best immigrating in the whole world.
This actually made me very excited. One of the things that I heard on Patriot Radio was some woman who called in who said, "Let me tell you that this always Trump, like we will never change our love and devotion for Trump thing is a crock of baloney. Because if he doesn't deliver on his promises about immigration, we will turn on him so fast." So I'm like, woo-woo! So this is fantastic because those people that we thought, you know, Trump could shoot people on, you know, on Fifth Avenue and won't lose their vote, those people are saying if he messes up immigration, meaning he allows anybody to stay, then they will turn on him.
Good.
Yeah, but the point,
Let
I
the
guess, is
turning
that
begin.
he seems to not be saying that any of this kind of legislation has to be tied to having money for the border wall. He seems to actually backed off on that a little bit. You know, the wall, he'll still talk about it, but there doesn't really seem to be on his to-do list anymore.
Probably because somebody told him, hey, look, dude, we don't even have the land rights for the border. And drugs come over through the legal entryways. There's 52 points along the border that they come in trucks. That's how the drugs
And Chelsea knows where they
people
are.
Tunnels and the tunnels
The
that
tunnels,
they do.
there's tunnels through like water tunnels that there are like scuba diving coyotes. Those are the people that bring the
Oh, I
immigrants
thought you meant
over.
actual coyotes.
That would have been
I was
pretty
so
incredible.
excited.
No.
They were going.
Could someone please draw that up for us for next week, though? Like a scuba diving coyote?
Wily coyote.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. There were drug roadrunners
Things
with
are coming over
condoms
through
full of heroin up
drones.
their ass.
I mean, everybody is laughing at this wall idea. Drug dealers are like, yes,
Please
let's
build
do-"
a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think El Chapo actually donated to the Trump campaign because of how much he wants that wall to go up. Anyway, it is interesting that that whole idea that people are expecting the wall and he doesn't seem to be able to deliver on it despite how many times he's talked about it. It's kind of like President Obama with Guantanamo Bay. But before we go, what I want to talk about...
That is such a silly comparison, but okay.
It's on. It was on his to-do list, and I believe it's still open. It's all I'm saying. He had a long time to try and get that done. So, Joe Arpaio is running for
Oh,
Jeff Flake's
yes.
Senate seat, and I know we only have another minute. And
It's like Christmas all over
I know.
again.
And
Like it's
I-
Christmas in January.
and I will say that, Chelsea and I were talking beforehand, there's no doubt in my mind he is going to win because
And
he
I
is so
think
beloved.
you are so wrong.
And you tried to say that because I said that Roy Moore was going to win.
You were so sure.
I was so sure. I'm still surprised that Roy Moore didn't win.
All right.
I
well,
am too, actually.
I think this
Yeah, we took a
race,
day off of our vacation and came in and did a special
Yes.
show.
this race is going to shape up very similar to the Alabama because
It is.
there's an establishment Republican in, then there's like the Steve Bannon Republican in, which is Arpaio, and then there's going to be a Democrat, and the Democrat may very well win because of the split in the Roy Moore Luther Strange-ish
But
parallel in Arizona.
what Joe Arpaio is guilty of is not molesting teenagers at the mall. It's being in contempt of court.
So you think that because he was actually convicted of some serious true crime that he has a better chance of being elected?
Have you ever been to Arizona?
I have,
Okay.
on my way down into Mexico.
Okay.
When I
Same
drive.
here.
And you know what and
Just
there
last
are
month.
a lot of Mexican citizens living in Arizona, and the
Native
thought-
Americans.
Not for long. There's not going to be very many Mexicans living in Arizona
And-
at all, or
and
Native Americans.
Many of
believe
them,
me,
and
believe
many
me.
of them who aren't into voting will show up to vote against that guy.
And I would also say, if we go back to look at his last race for sheriff in Maricopa County, which is where Phoenix is, which encompasses about 60% of the land area of the entire state, he lost by double digits. So he's not well liked in Phoenix, which is the largest population center. And this was before anything that happened with his trial and Trump pardoning him and everything else. So now you have people that are going to be even more riled up. And Arizona's right on that tipping point, and we thought maybe it would shift a little more blue in 16, but it's almost there. And I would say by 2020 for sure, Maricopa County is definitely going for the Democratic candidate for president. So you're already at an area where he's going to have a very hard time to win, and he's also 85 years old.
Yeah.
Which is
Didn't Trump
isn't
only
Trump 85 years old?
basically,
Trump
but I
only
mean
beat
85.
Hillary by like 4 points in Arizona? It was not.
It was
very
the closest since since Clinton
Well,
and
look, you might-
Bill Clinton.
So
You might
Christian,
be right.
we need a bet.
You, all right, we can bet something. What is something Arizona theme? I bet you a bowl
prickly
of,
pear margarita.
A bowl of scorpions, and you you
scorpion
can
on a
bet me a
prickly pear
cactus.
margarita.
Diamondback.
You will win. You'll wear the pink underwear that Arpaio had the prisoners wear.
I always thought that was kind of funny, actually. Sure, I'll wear the whole pink jumpsuit and the underwear on the outside. By the way, Sheriff Joe, if you'd come on the show, I'll find somebody in Arizona to vote for you. What do you think about that? Look, I just want people to come on the show, you know? I mean, yeah, it's...
We need the right kind of people on the show here.
No, we just need people. No offense to everybody on here. But it'd be great to get somebody running for office on here, don't you think?
We'll get Oprah. We'll get her to call in.
I mean, I already said, you know. And honestly, I would settle for Stedman. If Stedman came on, I would vote for Oprah. I probably have like two
Not
questions. I have
not
two-
after you say I will settle for Stedman
I have like-
after that soundbite.
I have like
Or
two,
Gail.
I have,
Take Gail.
I have two questions for Stedman, but I think neither of them I should probably ask in public. Anyway, we are out of time. But thanks so much to everybody who joined us at this special early time, especially the people who said nice things. But no, we love everybody. And we'll be back next Tuesday at our regular time at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at TrumpReportABTV. But until then, I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ.
At Chelsea Galicia.
At Hey Tamra.
At SMan80.
And we will see you next time on the Trump Report.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion. From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.